I was a typical high school kid. I hung out with my friends on weekends and after school. I was pretty involved in the sports world, and I was involved in my Jewish community. Probably the only difference between me and a lot of my peers was that I was in love with my best friend, and he never knew it. Alex and I hung out after school together, we played sports together, so it wasn't your typical high school romantic comedy. While I'm not here to tell you that story today, what I sadly did internalize from my relationship with Alex was that I could never be who I truly was with the worlds that I lived within at that time. Whether it was the sports world, the Jewish world, or just being a typical suburban kid. I didn't actually ever challenge that notion until I was 20 years old. I was reconnecting with an old friend who I had grown up with and gone to Chabad Jewish Day School with. Rachel was telling me how her life had changed, where she went to school in Washington, D.C., and I was telling her how my life had changed, where I went to school in Amherst, Massachusetts. And about halfway through the conversation, Rachel looked around the coffee shop, paused, and let me know she had a secret to reveal. She had started dating women. In that moment, I froze. My heart was racing. I also looked around the coffee shop, made sure nobody else was listening, told her I had a secret to reveal, and told her that I was in love with a guy. What Rachel did in that moment was gave me the access, the keys per se, to exploring someday who I actually truly would be and was. My idea of potentially coming out as a gay man. Rachel would become a great resource for me over the next couple of years. The first time I went down to DC and visited her, we were going out to a gay bar, and we got in a taxi. There was one guy on my left, one guy on my right, one hand on my left thigh, and one hand on my right thigh. And I was like a frozen icicle. All of these emotions going through me, happiness and joy, fear and confusion. I really had no idea what that night would bring, but what I did know was it would be among the first opportunities I ever had to explore who I really was, build friends and community. Rachel represented just one of the worlds that I grew up within, the Jewish one. Yet I was super involved in the sports world, at hockey practices and baseball games all of the time. And a lot of my weekday evenings were spent in locker rooms, where among the vernacular were tons of homophobic slurs. They were used to joke around with each other, but what they did to me was force me even further into the closet, making me believe that I could never be who I truly was within the sports world. Yet despite all of those negative experiences, I loved sports so much. Teamwork and camaraderie, competition. I hoped that maybe it would change. So when I got to college, I majored in sport management and started working in the athletic department. I remember my boss, John, who openly discriminated against me for being Jewish, whether it was on Friday nights when I couldn't make a game, or if I had to miss an assignment for a Jewish holiday. He always said I needed to figure out that Jewish stuff if I was going to be a real sports professional. Thankfully, John was not the only authority figure in my life at that time in the sports world. About halfway through college, I met Lori, one of the most inspirational people I had ever met. She was my professor and also an athletic director at a nearby university. And in the first few weeks of our course together, she talked about homophobia in sports, what she had experienced her entire life. It was like she was telling my story one day. She had been cut from teams and cast out, forced back into the closet. Yet somehow she had persevered. She had become a coach and an athletic director, showing up hand in hand to games and practices with her wife and her children. Our relationship thankfully continued as she became my thesis advisor the next semester. And while there was certainly academic merit to what we discussed, I remember when Lori turned to me. She said, "Ethan, I think you're actually homophobic against yourself, and that is stunting some of your progress in coming out." Homophobic against myself? What was she even talking about? What Lori would go on to help me understand was that I didn't need to perform anybody else's act or understanding of what it meant to be gay through my words or my actions. Lori gave me the access, the keys to having an ownership of myself and my own sense of being. Rachel and Lori gave me some sense of momentum, but I hadn't really outed myself to anybody else. I had no friends, no community, and so the only place I knew where to go next was Hillel, the place where all of my friends were. I spent almost every Friday night there. I had the opportunity to lead several different organizations. And I remember I was talking with the Hillel director, Rabbi Saul, about potentially what could be next in my journey and help me come out. In the conversation, I asked him if he would help me get to a conference for queer Jewish college students in DC, one that Rachel had invited me to. He said, absolutely, you should go. I said, but I couldn't really afford to go. That day, he took out his Hillel checkbook and paid for my flight. I went down to DC, and it changed my life. I met people who grew up like me, who struggled with similar things, who were both stereotypically gay and non-stereotypically gay. And I came back to UMass with all of this momentum, and I went into Rabbi Saul's office thinking about how I could actually come out, and he said, why don't you do it at Hillel? Use us as a resource. Give a talk about being gay and being Jewish. At that moment, I was like, in front of Hillel, all these people who knew straight Ethan, even my Orthodox friends, would they accept me the way I am? He said not only would it be empowering for me, but that I could actually help others come out with hidden identities as a result of my speech. And that's what got me, that I could help others. And so I gave that speech. And it was amazing. It was the starting point to building true friendships and exploring gay community and dating and all of these things that seemed magical to me at the time. And as I was thinking about where I was going to take my life next in graduate school, I had several different opportunities across the United States. And what helped me decide most was the location that I could actually explore what it meant to be gay and so many other things. A brother, a son, Jewish, an athlete. And so I had the opportunity to attend Boston University. And among the first places I went in Boston was, of course, the Hillel. The UMass one was so empowering to me. And as I went into the Hillel building, I was given awkward stares, ignored. I thought maybe it was just some of the students who didn't really know why I was there or who I was. I tried to start a gay and Jewish organization in the Hillel building. And I remember the first program we put on. I went up to the Hillel director that night as we brought in the author of God versus Gay. I said, Rabbi, it would be really important for me if you would come up and hear what this author has to say. He turned to me and he said, yeah, I have some really interesting questions to ask those gay people about how they live their lives. I knew that BU Hillel was not going to be what UMass Hillel was, and I had to go elsewhere. I went out into Boston, and I joined gay sports leagues where we were gay on the field and gay off the field. I started working for an organization that put on retreats for queer Jewish college students, similar to the one that had changed my life just a year ago. And as I was coming out of graduate school and thinking about what I wanted to do with my life, I knew I wanted to work with college students, help change their lives the same way my life was changed in college. And so I applied to jobs, and there it was one day, the Director of Student Life at Boston University Hillel. I passed by it, but in the days and weeks to come, I could not get it off of my mind. I thought, what had thousands of other students experienced if their lives were anything like mine? I did some research, and through the grapevine, I found out that there was a new director and a new Hillel. That made me apply. I went to the interview, immediately outed myself as a gay man, and I was pleasantly surprised to hear that this new director wanted to build a Hillel that was based on being inclusive and vibrant and representative and relevant. We talked about the cultural changes that needed to happen with student programs and the financial ones at a place that had been challenged for many years. And so when he offered me the position, I accepted. I literally and figuratively had the keys to this place that had rejected me. I went in those first few weeks and found out a couple interesting things. One was that the student hiring committee had vocally said they didn't want somebody like me hired. Second, the former Hillel director had told all of the other staff that I was there to be a gay recruiter, to turn people gay. What was he even talking about? That's not a thing. The new director and I had challenges in front of us. What we invested in the most was rebuilding partnerships that had dissipated. And it wasn't too long before our biggest partner, the university, came knocking and asked me to write an op-ed for the university news service about what was going on at this new Hillel. I used words like inclusive and vibrant, welcoming, diverse, which only exacerbated the feelings of those who felt like I didn't belong. Imagine going to work every day where people not only disagree with your professional decisions, but reject who you are. Thankfully, over the next couple of years, I would have the opportunity to step up and step in certain ways at a Hillel that was culturally and financially challenged. I'm proud to say that today I work with some of the most dedicated and caring Hillel professionals I've ever met that have helped BU come to the forefront of the industry. It was because of Rachel and Lori and Rabbi Saul that I understood that I was good enough just the way I was, that I didn't need to change, and nobody else did. And it was because of the mentors that I met throughout my time at Hillel, and even because of several in this room today, that helped me understand that everybody deserves the keys to the car, that it doesn't matter what your skin color is, if your parents' bank account is at a certain level, or if your sexual orientation and gender identity merge with everybody else's. We are good enough just the way we are. You see, we at Hillel have great power. The UMass Hillel experience was so powerful for me in a positive way, and the BU one was so powerful for me in a different way. We're in front of thousands of students every day as Hillel professionals. Imagine if we really grasped and understood the long-term impact that our words and actions have on students' lives. Whether it's a simple words of welcome, helping plan a program, or taking out a checkbook and helping somebody get to a conference. Those words and actions were given to me by my mentors, and they never even knew that they changed my life. We don't need an authority figure or a supervisor to tell us that we can. Sometimes we need to grab the keys off the wall, give access to so many others, get in the car, and start driving down the road to change. Thank you.